Taste buds ready because Taste of Cayman is back. Join us May 13th at Festival Green, Camana Bay. Eat, drink, and dance the night away. Taste of Cayman offers the very best of Cayman's food and drink scene with plenty of music to keep the party going. Get your festival tickets online today at tasteofcayman.org or call 623-6700. Brought to you by the Cayman Islands Tourism Association and sponsored by AI Rentals, Camana Bay, DMS Broadcasting, and numerous valued partners.
Real life, real topics. Welcome back to Cayman Conversations, now streaming on Cayman Times Facebook and YouTube channel, and also live on Bobo FM 89.1. I'm Ralph Lewis, and today we welcome back our special guest, Honorable Minister for Tourism, Tourism and Sports, Mr. Kenneth Bryan. Minister Bryan is also the MP for Georgetown Central. During our conversation, he'll provide updates, including his Parliament presentation, midterm performance, Port Project, Scranton Park, and others. As usual, lots to talk about. So let's get started. Good afternoon, Mr. Kenneth. How are you doing today?
I am blessed. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ralph. All is well here. Another beautiful day in the Cayman Islands, and trying to stay positive as we, work our way through these challenging times globally. But I'm blessed. The Lord woke us up this morning, so we a lot to be grateful for.
All right, that's so true. That's so true. A lot of topics today, as usual, but everyone's listening now on radio as well. So we want to jump right into it. And just coming out of the Parliament presentations last week, there were a lot that you said and what you talked about. Can you sort of elaborate on your presentation in that meeting?
Well, recently we just delivered our strategic policy statement as a government, trying to focus on the areas of priority for us, which is obligatory by us by law as we move forward closer to a budget at the end of this year. So as you know, we have 2-year budgets, and this 2-year budget that we recently passed when we got elected is coming to an end at the end of this year. So the new budget starts on the 1st of January, 2024. And within that, we have to give a scope of what our focus points will be in respect to those spendings and the government's policy by way of delivery. So in that, the strategic policy statement, we outlined the 5 major broad outcomes that we want to focus on, being one of improving the quality of life for Caymanians, 2, enhancing competitiveness while meeting international standards, 3, future-proof to increase resiliency, 4, modernize government to improve public sector performance, that meaning the civil service itself and public service, and 5, to protect and promote Caymanian culture, heritage, and identity. And I think that last one is probably the most important one in the eyes of the voting public and those who reside here in the Cayman Islands. That one and the first one, which says improve the quality of life for Caymanians. Mm-hmm. So in there, we go down into broader outcomes of the initiatives that we want to do and so forth. And in respect to me as Minister for Tourism in the area that I am responsible for, the Premier on behalf of my ministry would have outlined what the goals and hopes are for tourism. And it's pretty straightforward. As usual, we're going to continue to try to grow and improve tourism so that we can continue to make good revenues. We did very well last year. We were projected to make, I think it was 15 million. That's 15 million. And we ended up making $22 million in revenue, even without the country being open until August. So I'm very proud of my team here within the ministry and the Department of Tourism and the director, Ms. Rosa Harris. We worked out very, very hard in 2022 to push and remind the world that we're open, and the results proved itself by some major revenue increases. Things look positive now for the first quarter of this year. We are already surpassing our projections, so that's positive. So our goal for the next 2 years is to continue that growth and that attraction for Cayman, but more importantly, to start to further Caymanize the tourism product. For many years, we've heard the discussions about not enough Caymanians and the products that we deliver being a reflection of who we are as a people. And we've heard that same sentiment from feedback of the customer across the world, not only in the Cayman Islands, but across the region. They want to see more authentic products. And the only way you can get authenticity is by the people who deliver it being authentic themselves. So in my intention in the next 2 years is to try to focus more on your small mom and pop tourism products, to encourage them to, it doesn't have to be something big and fancy, commercialized branding or what have you. But the cruise lines and stay over wants to see the little, a mom or a grandmother who does starch at home still. A passenger can get the opportunity to come sit down with her for 2 hours to hear her story about how did she learn how to thatch and why does she still do it. When she grew up, what was the purpose for thatch? Did we export it? Was it a part of our clothing in our use on our daily tools, like carrying fruits and vegetables from the farm? That authentic story, which tells us a lot about who we are. Now, that is a product that can be sold. Now, a Caymanian, say, for example, that lady could be sitting there at home, spend 2 or 3 hours with 10 people, telling that story, showing them what they do and how they do it and why they do it, can make her an income for up to like $300 for the day. We want to get more into that kind of authentic offering. So we want to, in the next 2 years, have a budget where probably we can help Caymanians see where the benefit is for more authentic, and it gets money more directly in the hands of the people rather than through a big business. It goes direct to the deliverer of the product and the service. So we're going to be focusing on that. We're going to be focusing a lot more heavier on training opportunities for Caymanians. We did a really good job last year. We spent over $1 million on Caymanians, training them with over 600 participants, learning to be bartenders, servers, boat captains, quality training standards, and a myriad of different options of training to help them deliver a strong product in the Cayman tourism industry. And we'll continue to do that. I introduced 2 new scholarships within my ministry, which was related to pilots. Now, particularly because I'm the Minister for Cayman Airways, I want to ensure that there's always going to be Caymanian pilots available to fly our planes. We never want to be in a situation where anybody else is flying us around the world. So in respect to next year as well, the other 2 things from a tourism perspective that I'll be focusing on is our waterfront project. That project itself is expected to be a location where Caymanians can be trained within the hospitality industry to deliver some of the common services that we would normally deliver. For example, at a restaurant, you want to be a server, you want to be a bartender, you want to be a chef, you want to be a helper in the kitchen, a maintenance of the product itself. All of those things that normally come along with it. There will be water sports related matters close to that project as well. So you can have people within the water sports area. What we find normally is one of the hurdles for Caymanians is that they may be trained, and then the next thing that you hear from the industry, which is not everybody, but some do use as an excuse to hire non-Caymanians, is the fact that they don't have the experience. So you may send them off, get them trained, but then, they don't have the experience. So what we're trying to do is address both issues within one. So this location, this project is actually a restaurant entertainment location whereby it'll be solely serviced by Caymanians on a rotation basis, where they can get training at the same time as experience. So when they go back out into the workforce, they can say, listen, I've worked at this accredited location and I had firsthand experience with customers within the tourism industry, and they can use that as a justification to say, I am qualified to do this job. Private sector, you have no reason not to hire me. Because obviously, as a government who also is in charge of labor in this country, we have to manage that relationship of protecting Caymanians, but also allowing the business owner to have qualified workers to deliver the services for their business. And sometimes, unfortunately, malicious people use excuses not to hire Caymanians for whatever reason that may be. And this way, we believe we can address that to say, okay, then, no, we do not believe you're genuinely trying to hire a Caymanian. You're using excuses. Therefore, we can counteract that by saying, okay, then you disapproved on this Caymanian who we have qualified and we have given an experience. That means that you don't deserve anything else from a government perspective benefit. So this is how we're trying to address that from a Caymanization perspective and continued growth of our people within this very important industry, which is our second pillar of our economy. We will continue to grow and develop the stayover numbers. We have a number of hotels coming online next year. We're working closely with those to make sure that they're onboarded into the industry well. We had a meeting with the hotel that is right there next to Kimpton, making sure that all the relevant agencies are working closely with them so they can meet their mark for their opening date. And I don't think I want to say that. That's the Indigo Hotel. I'll let them announce what date they will be opening. That's for them to do. But making sure planning, inspections, fire, police, all of these different tips in Department of Environmental Health, roads, everything else works well so they can come onto the market in the appropriate time, because we need more room stock. The Cayman has become a very attractive place, and I'm happy to say that that's because of the hard work within the department and the Ministry of Tourism. And we need more rooms, because what we're starting to see now is that people are starting to go into the Airbnb market, which is great for locals to get a tap into some of that revenue, but it also has an adverse effect by way of tapping into the room stock for rentals, for locals and housing. So to somewhat counteract that housing demand problem, the quicker we get some of these hotels that are being developed now on the market, it releases a little bit of pressure. So people, like, we have peaks at times where things are such high demand, the hotels are sold out. That's a good problem to have, but it's a problem in all the same. And we're planning for that, to work closely with the entities to do so. In respect to the airport, we're in the stages now of hopefully approving, and I can break this on here with you, which is it's the government's intention to support the expansion of the airport. We found the last report from the Airports Authority presented to caucus, and it's just a matter of formality now to take it to cabinet. So we can go forward with two parts of the airport expansion, which will be the airport extension and the general aviation remodeling and redevelopment. Because we've always said from the start of my tenure as minister is to focus more on quality than quantity. And quality also has to do with the high-end stayover visitors who comes with private planes, and they invest in our economy. They spend big money on big rooms. Like, say, for instance, if you're spending $2,000 a night on a suite, that's practically 6 or 7 rooms that you would have to sell for one person. So enhance that expected standard that Cayman has. We're a high-end jurisdiction, and we're attracting more high net worth individuals. So we want to make sure that the first time they enter the country also reflects that standard, in the general aviation area is one of them. So within the constraints of our financial position, we're focusing on the general aviation, and also from an opportunity to get greater revenue, we're focusing on the airport length of the strip, because that length of the strip allows us to get planes that can fly from a longer range. And those longer range flights also allows us to bring in passengers at different times than what we deal with right now, because we're having a bit of a problem at the airport where at peak times it's just really crowded. So in the early morning, there's not as much flights. In the late evening, there's not as much flights. So there's room on either side. And you can, if you had a longer airstrip, you can do red eye flights or early morning flights, which can create more revenue from the airport perspective, as well as a tourism overall revenue. So that's working on there. We're also talking about the port situation.
Mr. If I may interject just a second, one question: will there be jet bridges?
Not in the current layout, because it does cost a lot of money to do our airport redevelopment. I want to premise that by saying, though it is a priority to do jetways eventually, sometimes people have forgotten, unfortunately, that we're coming out of a very global issue of the pandemic, which created instability in so many different ways. I know that we've even been accused of using some of our borrowing for cash. That's because we spent a lot of money keeping the country afloat during a time when there was no money here. So that money just didn't appear out of nowhere. We had to use that to, stipends, COVID controls, testing, all of these other things that we had to put in place. We had to hire a large group of people for travel Cayman, for travel back and forth in a safe manner. HSA needed more staffing for testing. There's a lot of spend that we spent in that 2-year period that we weren't making any money at all. So you're not making any money, that's done, and you're spending more. So the equation went from this to this. And as a result, we're limited on what we can do now. It's going to take us a good period, at least 2 to 3 to 4 years of getting solid revenue back in the country before we can take on a major exercise, unless you're willing to increase taxes. And that's not something we want to do. Even the airport itself in its redevelopment, it will need the necessary funding to support such an expansion of the airstrip as well as the general aviation. But we believe those fees can be passed on to persons who travel rather than the local economy. So the air jetways right now are not feasible at the immediate moment. I think that within the next year to 2 years, we can definitely assess the market to see exactly where we are with our revenues. It is justified to have it. Whether it's justified for the finances to have it is a different question. Yes. So particularly with the tourism market not leveling out flat as it should be yet, it's still in its flexibility of seeing exactly where does the tourism market stay. And I say tourism market by way of travel in this aspect, to make sure that there's consistency. Once there's consistency in respect to the travel and immigration into our country, then we can have better projections on revenues, and then we can use those projections on revenues as justifications for loans and borrowings for the airport to be redeveloped, which will allow air jetways, if you understand what I mean. Yeah. So the airport is one, and before I was just about to go on to the port, which is another area of my responsibility. The port is doing good as it always does, and I want to say I'm so proud of the port staff there and the management and the board. They've been able to even throughout all the chaos of the COVID situation, and today they still operate quite smoothly. We do want to make sure that the staff there are doing well, and we're working on those with some financial movements as to their salaries and so forth. But the operations itself, from a safety perspective, are also being addressed. But more importantly, a looming matter of the potential of within 10 years not having any more space to expand with a growing population and a growing economy, that we have to now start considering either expanding or upgrading the current location or finding a new location in the Cayman Islands. That was dealt with in a strategic outline case, which was accepted by cabinet, now put out to have a business case done. A project manager is trying to be identified now within the board and the director of the port, who's in charge of that now. That would take about 6 months to create an RFP for outline for a business case as to what the government can do to support the Port Authority on this pending problem, whether it will be renovations to the current location or expansions to the current location or moving to a different location. So that's going to take us a little bit more time to get feedback from them on that. But that is a continued thing into the next 2 years, because this topic is about what's going to happen over the next 2 years from an SPS perspective. So I'm just trying to cover all the areas of what my area of focus is.
Yes.
Also in the SPS, another area that I recently dealt with is the transition of the Tourism Attraction Board, which is a very old law from 1996, which was 27 years old, and transitioning that legislation into a Tourism Attractions Authority that will have a board below it, which gives us the ability to better manage the attractions that we have in the Cayman Islands in a more organized, structured way. that we can deliver that product and manage those sites in a better way. That because obviously those sites is what people get attracted to the Cayman Islands for. The commonly known one is the Pedro St. James, which the TAB has been doing a great job with for over years. But as we want to start to grow the responsibilities of the Tourism Attraction Board, we thought it would be better to put it into an authority where it can have the legal components to address these things. For example, the record of the 10 sales, it is not under a specific entity. Now that it's been transferred to an authority, it can be moved under that so we can better maintain it, sell it as an attraction and so forth, or the blowholes or any other attraction for that fact, maybe in the sister islands, that we can add to that. So that allows us also to actually be in coherence with the public authorities law, because the law, the old Tourism Attraction Board law was so outdated, it actually didn't meet the requirements of the Public Authorities Act. So it was in conflict with that. This new authority allows us to be compliant with the legislation. So outside of that, the only other thing within my remit for the SPS was obviously my Central Scranton Park, which is also a component of the Georgetown revitalization, adding more green space, but also a commitment as the elected member for Georgetown Central. And that will also be monies available within the budget for the completion of that, because we've done a severe exercise over the last year and a half of expanding the remit of what was proposed before, which was a lot smaller, and moved from a 0.5 acre to 4 acre lot. Yes. And the main reason for the expansion more though was the fact that the area is a bit of a flood zone area, and we couldn't do a comprehensive park within the small space without factoring in that, you know, neighboring persons would have flood effects. So we had to buy more space, which allowed us to expand it more. And this park will have the opportunity to focus on the things that I think is beneficial for the quality of life of our people, which is one, a youth center for kids to go and participate in a positive way, or do after school programs, or do homework programs. And then the other location center would be for seniors. You know, seniors unfortunately don't give enough attention to after retirement. They're still happy, alive, and strong, and they want to be active with their minds. A place maybe they can do a bingo on a Wednesday night, or have old conversations to talk about what they used to do, or just go to exercise and have conversations. We're going to have a center for that, and then a general park for the well-being of families in a green space under some authentic Caymanian trees, and a place for entertainment to flourish and productive events, whether it be you want to go down there and have a family picnic, or you may want to get married there, or you want to have a birthday celebration, or anything for that fact on the general Monday to Friday situation. You can just go there and have lunch next to the pond where they're floating around it. So we have a lot of goals in respect to the Central Scranton Park, which is a bigger component to the Georgetown revitalization. And I'm proud of where we've gotten with the design with that so far. And I was able to reveal the design of that at my public meeting just 2 weeks ago. We've gotten some really positive reviews on that, so I'm excited about that.
If you don't mind, we have a copy of that presentation, and we'd like to throw it on the screen for those looking at us on YouTube and Facebook. And we'd like you to give a description for those of us who are listening by Bobo. So here is the Scranton Park. Just give us a description.
All right. So what you're seeing here is a 3D imagery drone shot from the sky. You can see the two prominent parts is a pond right in the middle center of the park. The blue roof you see there is a senior center, and you're moving over now to the entranceway of the park, which is called the Central Scranton Park. So it's going to be coming off of Shedden Road, and you come off Shedden Road straight down to the park. You'll see an entranceway that says Central Scranton Park with a roundabout where you can do a drop off, and you come through the entrance, and then you walk down this beautiful path which comes to a wishing well location, where it used to be predominantly a location where the people in the community used to get fresh water from. So we want to keep that as a keepsake. So from the memorial perspective, around it, you see a lot of green space, which we want to use as many authentic Caymanian trees as we possibly can to create shading, because Cayman is obviously a hot place. We see some sprinkles in the pond there. That's good for irrigation, to keep the pond fluent. We're also gonna, what you don't see in the image here is we want to put some greenery back in there in respect to like some water lilies and so forth. You don't get to see the inside of the centers, unfortunately, because the design work for the inside of the centers have not been completed yet. That's in the process right now. But what the hope and plan is that you have an area where you can come around a pond and have a relaxing atmosphere of positivity. There will also be some exercise equipment there for seniors, particularly because sometimes seniors they need to keep their bodies still flexible, and if you sit at home doing nothing for a long time, you start to get tensed up, so to speak. So these exercise machines use your own body weight to stretch and keep those muscles going. Ultimately, all of that is right in the middle heart of Central Community and right behind the government building, which allows for the neighboring businesses like Cricket Square, properties and persons who house their businesses there can take lunch and go down by the park and have their lunch in an environment that is positive and get away from the work. And so the same thing for the civil service. Civil servants can actually take a break because they work so hard within the government building, take a break and go down and mentally zoom out and have, a sandwich, a cup of coffee or what have you, where you can feel that good Cayman breeze and some positive environment sitting underneath the shade. And in the evening, you can have events and bring things to life there with some music. Obviously nothing too disturbing for the surrounding areas, but entertainment in a positive way, whether that is the Cayman Kitchen Band or good old Caymanian activities in the evenings and in the weekends. So we believe it's going to be positive for the surrounding environment, and it's a part of the government's commitment to having more green space across the island, because we want to focus on that first strategic broad outcome, which is improving the quality of life for our people. And sometimes improving that is when is their downtime to relax the mind and start worrying about all the stresses of works and bills and all that. You need to mentally stop for a minute and sometimes just thinking about the positives of life around good company. And that's what we think we will be encouraging at this location.
And also it's the whole community feel of bringing the community together and having one place where we can have our people meet other people. And that's one thing we miss. We miss coming together and socializing. And this happens in society many around the world where not enough socializing and coming together and bring back the old conversations you had with your family members. Just having an environment or having the space to have that happen. And I personally can see where that can happen.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And please allow me to take this opportunity to say that this park was not my idea. It was always the idea of a community in Central Scranton. And you may have heard about the Central Scranton Committee, which is chaired by our good friend, Mr. Dale Ramon, and many of his supporting staff, from Miss Lucille Seymour to Christine Burke, Miss Donna Ramon, and Mr. Anthony Ramon, and many others, and Miss Cheryl, all of those persons who have been in the community for decades, planning on this vision for the community. I'm only just the facilitator to get it delivered. It was their vision, one that I bought into when I become elected. So I don't want to be seen as taking the credit for this vision. I'm just been given the opportunity on behalf of the people of Georgetown Central and the Greater Cayman Islands to help with this delivery, because I'm also committed to it with them. And I am so happy to be able to help facilitate their dream. And I look forward to being able to have a groundbreaking in the near future with that committee at the forefront, because they've been at it, particularly the Ramon family have been at this for decades, delivering when nobody was there outside of just donations of a couple $100 or food or what have you. They kept the community together. And what we're just doing now is adding a holistic approach from a country perspective to facilitate that positive initiatives that they were always doing and just carrying on a national scale. So I'm really excited on behalf of the Central Scranton Committee to help deliver this project. And and I'm so committed to this. I can't wait to have the RFP out for a company to help sign off to say we're going to start the building, and I'm hoping that can be sooner than later.
Okay, thank you. And you have your hands full. Um, I'm going to give you some more to put in your hands right now. But in the past, you were the
Okay.
Minister for Transportation and, of course, Roads. And it's now has now been passed on to Honorable J, Mr. J. And can you speak to where that plan is? Are we going to have an east-west arterial? Is it going to happen? It's not going to happen? Because we're hearing that we're trying to develop a tourism plan that would include residents who live in the east to have their businesses, and so therefore a roadway definitely would be important for the tourists to reach those destinations. Where are we with the east-west arterial, and is it going to happen?
Um, I'd have to say yes, it has to happen. There's no question about that. I think the challenge have always been when, and that when is due to the necessary obligatory by law requirement for an EIA to be developed, one of which I welcome and I respect. But there is this challenge and this balance that needs to be created between timeliness of the people's need for something such as east-west arterial to alleviate the pressures the people feel, particularly those in the eastern districts, where they sit in traffic for 2 hours every single day, Monday to Friday, to go to work and to come home. That's just untenable, and that goes against the principle of our first broad outcome, which is the quality of life for our people. And yes, to say, if I said to you today, I'm going to fix your problems, but if I don't give you a timeline for it, then it's mental insanity. But if I say to you, I can deliver this for you in 6 months, 2 years, 1 year, then you have a target to work towards. And unfortunately, one of the discussions about the EIA and how long it's going to take, people are just not satisfied with how long it's taking. And in my discussion about the east-west arterial, I suggested to take an approach quite similar to that of what the world did with the vaccine. So we all know that vaccines take a long time for approval, usually about 10 years. But in a crisis within the world, we decided to say we brought every specialist that we can think of across the world who knows about how to formulate a vaccine in a safe way, in the quickest way possible. And then the vaccine was created in about a year or less. And I believe that because of the significance of the negative effects on the quality of life of our people, mentally, physically, financially, that we should take the same approach with this in respect to the environmentalists who need to give us the information of what to do to get the thing started. So if it takes normally, 3 years or 2 years or a year to do an environmental impact assessment, and I think this is more than a year now because of the distance of 12 miles and having to assess that whole thing. If that takes normally a year or 2 years, then with one set of people, then bring on 10 sets of people so we can divide that time into 10, where it could be done rather than in a year and a half or 2 years, it could be done in 4 months, because the people are just fed up with the time and the negative effects it's taking from the east-west arterial. Now, you rightfully said that the east-west arterial is a major component to the tourism delivery, because some of the problems that we're having in respect to diversification and authenticity of our delivery of our product is more of our indigenous Caymanians, who are the ones who deliver the authenticity, has been spread out more in the eastern districts. Like, you can't get anything better than a good old Bontown or Eastern or North Sider to give you that good old Cayman twang as us here in the Georgetown West Bay area, who are modernizing or even our talk and our delivery to sit that city style type of approach.
Right.
And they still hold on to many of those traditions in those eastern districts, because we're creating there's almost a bit of a two worlds over here on the more populated side to the west of the island and the eastern side. And in order for me to get the tourists to those locations in a timely manner that makes a strong economy, we need a better roadway. Because one of the negative feedbacks that we get is that traffic is a problem for the delivery of a tourism product or service. And that east-west will help facilitate that. But that's only one component of the east-west arterial. We have the other components which we talked about, which is traffic. I think everybody knows that one, and the alleviation that can cause there. But it's also about the future development of our society. We are having a major problem with home ownership and land ownership by Caymanians based on the supply and demand chain. The fact that there is only limited amount of access from a road perspective to land means there's only a limited amount of land available for purchase. A lot of the land in this country is landlocked. I believe, me particularly, believe that this road access allows us to get to more land, which can be subdivided to bring more land on the market. The more land you bring onto the market, you reduce the price. And it's based on a simple supply and demand concept. If you increase the amount of the product, then the prices go down. If you reduce the amount of the product, the price goes up. So I believe this road will facilitate that and then allow the prices to be further closer in the margin or the reach of the Caymanian people to afford it, because we all accept the prices of housing and land property has gone through the roof, as well as cost of living to compile in that, as well as bank rates have shot up through the roof as well. So if we want to be committed to the thing that most Caymanians want to hear about is, where am I going to own a piece of my own country? We have to see that this road is allows us that ability to do so. But the other component, that's three things I've highlighted about the road so far. The other one is the diversification of our economy. The reason why we have traffic so much now is that 70% of the people who work in this country work on the western side of the island. So every single morning, everybody comes to Georgetown, right? If you had more working opportunities in the eastern districts, less people will be coming to town, then reduces the traffic. Right now in the eastern districts, we have some of the fundamental key things that you need for diversification or less people coming to town. We have a high school, perfect. We have supermarkets, perfect. We have a hospital up that way, even though it's not a government-run hospital, but we have a hospital in the case of emergencies, right? What we need, and we have homes up that side. What we need down that way is that even though you may have all of those things, everybody still gets up every morning to come to work. So we need to carry some of the jobs to the eastern side so people can live that way and don't have to come to the west anymore unless they choose to for some other reason. So you can work there, you can live there, your kids can go to school there, you can go to the supermarket there, and then ultimately you reduce the traffic flow. Now, this is a long-term strategy, right? The government currently leases over 1.5 times the size of the government building across the country because it doesn't have the space. We have the power to say, if we open the East-West Arterial, we can build another building that way and house all the people at that building, ultimately allowing probably about 30% drop in traffic. You know what 30% drop in traffic is? It's quite like what it's like when school's out and there's nobody going to school. You remember how easy the traffic is? Right. This is something we can do, and the East-West Arterial allows us to do that. And it also allows us to give Caymanians, what you call indigenous Caymanians, an opportunity to start over. We have an amazing contributor, and I'm going to get into a sensitive area here in a minute and try to wrap it up because I know you probably have another question. But the Dart family has come to the Cayman Islands and gave us great benefits by investment. One I appreciate and one I welcome. But we all know that the Dart family is not an indigenous group. It's not a Colonel, it's not a Borden, it's not a Seymour, it's not a Macfield, it's not a Foster or a Thompson or a Borden, any one of those names. I think that we have to accept the reality that we need to start thinking about a new town, a new vision, diversifying a new place so we can start over. Why don't we get some of the what we call successful Caymanians who may have a good penny in the bank, who can come together as a group to say, with this new East-West Arterial, let's start a new place, a new town that can offer up banking, can offer up commercial services, rentals, housing, supermarkets, all the things that you need for a town, and start fresh. And it's owned by our people. Caymanian names that you know and remember. and give them an incentive. Just we create an incentive for major developers like the Dart Group and like others. And sorry for using the Dart name so much. I don't want them to think I'm picking on them, but this is an example everybody knows. We can give an incentive program for our Caymanians who may have made an opportunity, so we can keep that value of our growth in our economy within the Caymanian context. Because most people that you speak to today would say, well, boy, we're losing our country, because we're given the opportunities for economic growth and development, which is coming, and we're continuing to grow. We're still a successful country, as difficult as things are. And we have to accept that growth and that success, the inevitability of it, to make sure it's in the right hands of the right people. And this road, in my humble opinion, is a key component to the next steps of the future of this country. When I'm not here and when you're not here, I want the great-grandchildren of this country to reflect back on this video and says, there was a vision for the future, that 50 years from now, 100 years from now, somebody thought about making sure it was in the hands of our people. And that's how we have to think. This road is not only about the traffic. It's about the bigger development of our society and our country as we know it as Cayman. And I must admit that there is the sensitive component from the environment perspective with this road development. I fully accept that. But what I don't accept is that it's taken so long to happen. And what I don't accept is that there isn't enough technology and engineering that we can protect the environment while still doing the road. And I think that's what the public is getting frustrated with. And me as a member of the government is also frustrated, because I've been elected by the people to deliver. And that's what they want us to do. And the people know that there's enough information out there to say, you have no excuses. And I agree, we have no excuses. We got to get it done. So that was my synopsis on that, on the road. I didn't get too much time there.
No, we have more time. But my concern is what damage will be done to the environment. And there may be a justifiable, but we need to have that information. And what you're saying is that it's taking too long to get information to us. So we can decide, what damage, what sacrifice do we have to make to move ahead with the plans that you've outlined. And without knowing what damage yes, there are documents and there have been releases, but we need to have more details. And this is where the EIA will elaborate on these things. So I agree, we need to fast forward that report so we all can have an idea of what happened. And we all can have our say in, okay, government, I think you should move ahead, or hold off, guys. And I hope that happens soon. So just give me a shout when it's ready so we can talk about what it does say.
I would love to be able to show you tomorrow, but I have no idea where it's at because it doesn't fall under my responsibility. But I Ralph, I'm going to challenge you a little bit on something. To say that there's going to be sacrifices, I don't think there necessarily has to be. Okay. I think that technology and engineering has been developed in a way where, for example, Alligator Alley in Florida?
Yes, I've driven there many times.
There's certain parts of it you can't even stop because you're not allowed to, because either side of the road is protected because of the sensitivities of the wetland, right? Now, we have a 12-mile road that is proposed. And I would say, based on the estimates from the minister, about 3 miles of that may have wetlands to be focused on, which the EIA has to focus on. Now, we can simply do that where we protect the either side of where the road has to go through. But we have not talked about the other 9 miles of it. Whereas for one, arable land, what about food security? How do we get to those farm lands that we always talk about food security, that we need to farm more and stop importing everything? We have to get to that land. And yes, we may have to go through some wetlands where we can put either pylons or culvert systems or protections in those zones to make sure we protect the ecosystems. I'm not saying that can't happen. I'm saying it needs to happen faster. And what I'm worried about, and I'm going to say something controversial, but I have to be honest with the people of this country. I'm sometimes worried that there is this slow pace or intentional lack of movement on the basis of in hopes that it doesn't happen. And that's just not acceptable. The country refuses to accept that this road is not going to happen. It's going to happen. One or two things can happen. It doesn't happen in this government, and this government suffers the consequences of an election as a result of not being able to deliver, or the next government is going to do it. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. How it happens, I agree with those that it has to be done in a protective way, but I'm not willing to accept that it can't be moved faster. And obviously, I gave you the example that when things are important for you in the world, they can move faster if it's a priority. And I believe it needs to be a bigger priority for the people of this country, because it has so many other effects, like the ones I've listed out earlier.
Okay. And I agree with you, Minister, that it will happen or something will happen in the future. I've been here quite a while, and I used to admire the 7 Mile Beach and what existed there. Look where we are today. Many people would have said that would never have happened, but we can't close our eyes to growth and development. I've always said you're either moving backwards or forwards. You're not standing still. And so we will take a break on that one at this point. And I just have two small topics I want to touch on briefly. And the first one is we're gonna have a coronation celebration next week downtown. Is that part of the waterfront tourism experience that you're trying to develop or you plan to develop?
Well, not particularly. It's going to be a tourism attraction because obviously we're British overseas territory. Not every country will be in celebration, like a Dutch territory or French territory wouldn't be doing this. So it's a holiday to Commonwealth countries, right?
Okay.
So yes, any visitors will have the opportunity to come on down and see us celebrate the crowning of our king, so to speak. But this event is just one example of celebrations you can have downtown. That's the whole purpose behind the Georgetown revitalization, which I must say the initiative was not created under this administration. This is one of the areas upon which I think, regardless which government is in, is an agreement of revitalizing Georgetown. And the project manager there envisioned these types of things. That's where you see the closure of the Cardinal Avenue and these types of things. So it is a part of the tourism product, but it's not specific by myself because it's actually done under the cabinet secretary's office in conjunction with Celebrate Cayman office, which is a part of the premier's office. But unfortunately, I'm not going to be here. I have to travel soon on Saturday, again, to represent the Caribbean on behalf of the Cayman Islands, where the Prime Minister, Mia Motley, will be speaking, and myself will be speaking on a panel. So I'm looking forward to that. Unfortunately, I won't be here, but in honor of our new king, I hope that all the public comes out. We're British overseas territory, and even if it gets tense sometimes, the relationship has been positive for us as a society, and we've grown this far because we're British overseas territory. So come on out and celebrate. And the king was here recently, and he seems to be an amazing person. I met him. He's pretty awesome. And send our respects by celebration of the coronation. I know the premier and the governor will be traveling to see it in person, and I wish them safety and health while they're over there. But let's celebrate it together as a country. We are a common overseas territory.
Okay, good. All right. Well, let's talk about finally that waterfront tourism experience. I have a few slides here, and if you could briefly just explain them for us, because from what I'm seeing, it is really, really magnificent. And for those listeners on the radio, Mr. Brian will again describe what we are seeing. And if you want to see it for yourself, we are recording this interview on YouTube and Cayman Times Facebook page. So go on there and look up today's conversation, and you'll actually get to see these slides. Mr. Brian, the first slide.
Okay. Thank you, Ralph. Or Mr. Lewis, my apologies. What you see here is the front-facing picture of what the design looks like, and it's the location is, just for those who haven't heard of it before, it's to the northern side of the Catboat Club and Lobster Pot. The government recently acquired the acreage of land, 2 acres there, and we're also going to be leasing an adjacent property right next to it to compile together to make a bigger piece. At this location, it's ultimately a restaurant and an entertainment location, quite like what was done at Tiki Beach next to Kimpton Sea Fire. Under it, you'll see a floor plan where there's bartenders at the bottom. There'll be on either side, there'll be kitchens where probably we'll cook local style foods from the likes of Cayman style beef, turtle, fried fish and fritters, conch stew, and obviously all the Caribbean flavors that you would normally expect when you come to a Caribbean island. And the visitors, we'll encourage and work in conjunction with the cruise lines to funnel people to this location, because right adjacent to that restaurant and entertainment location is going to be the craft market. So going back to the images, what you see here is that waterfront ocean view. There'll be a pool on the beach side close to the water, where people can sit and lounge and eat their food and enjoy the water after they're coming off the cruise ship. You know, Cayman is a hot place, so you want to have a lot of liquids available, whether either by consumption or being able to swim in it. What you see here is another pool with a swim-up bar where you have Caymanian bartenders serving some of those amazing cocktails that we're known for in the Caribbean. Again, what you're seeing on the screen here is some examples of Cayman food, Cayman style beef, fried fish, conch stew with white rice. These are the type of things we want to offer, because this is what the customer is talking about, authenticity. This next slide here, you see a coconut hut where we would like to allow a Caymanian to be sitting there with all the coconuts, cutting them fresh, you know, in a very clean environment, not what you see sometimes on the street. We want it to be connected to the standard that Cayman is known for its delivery, right? Again, another image here of people relaxing, enjoying the atmosphere, where you would have Cayman local bands playing in the background, which gives entertainers, young Caymanian entertainers, the opportunity to constantly have a place to play at, and you'll pay them to be there. So they're working on their craft and learning to the more gigs you get, the better you get at your instruments. And we want to hear from our Caymanian people playing. What you see here is a shot from behind the bar looking out to the ocean. Again, covered beautiful aesthetics of the standard of Cayman's delivery, with all Caymanian servers and bartenders, cooks, and so forth. Again, here you see an image of the floor plan with the benches and some examples of people sitting at a table. And you see a Caymanian here holding the serving table with a bottle of wine. And in this image, you see a person with dreadlocks, because we want to make sure it's authentic to Cayman. Like, whether you are black, white, dreads or no dreads, but you have to be Caymanian in respect to what we deliver. Again, this view here that you see on the screen is a view from the ocean looking at the property. And the water levels are really low at the very end, so there's a bit of a ledge where people can walk up to. And when you stand at that ledge, you're practically looking at the Cayman beautiful ocean sunset. That location has one of the best views of a sunset ever. And for those of you who may have gone to the Lobster Pot restaurant on an evening and to watch the sunset, you're going to get the exact same view, because it's about 100 feet away from each other. So we're going to give some competition to Lobster Pot, unfortunately. Also, it's going to be the housing location for the craft market. So just about 20 feet away from it, to the left-hand side, if you're facing it from the street, it will be the new location for the craft market, where individual stalls will be available for Caymanian crafts, the thatch makers, the coral jewelry makers, and anything authentic, whether it's our sea salts or perfumes, things that are genuinely authentic. And I want to specify on this for a minute here, because I must admit, I think that we have lost our focus on what is supposed to be a craft market. Now, I'll admit this today as minister, we have not come down hard on those within the craft market location, because we're all coming out of a pandemic. But before the pandemic, what we allowed to happen at the craft market is this importation of goods that are not authentic to Cayman, that you can get from any Chinese realtor that you want. Now, that is going to stop when we move over to this. It's not a time now to pressure those persons who are there to say you're importing something from China or from elsewhere that's not Caymanian. Right now, we need to get our people back on their feet. So I left that alone and let it kind of slide. But once we move to this location, it has to be only authentic. If not, you can't be there, because the purpose of why a government spends money to find a facility and a location for you to offer those things is because it's authentic to Cayman. If you want to sell a t-shirt and some jewelry that you can get from anywhere else, then you would have to do that just like every other business owner. Go out and find a location and rent and pay your fees and your licensing and your rent and all those other things like everybody else, because those other Caymanian owners have complained to say, well, why am I competing with the government who gives free location and free housing for them to compete against me, and they're selling the same products? Our purpose of financially finding a location is for the authenticity of crafts that are only found in the Cayman Islands. So sorry to leave that on that note, but to finish it off, this property location, if those who may be aware of it, also had a docking facility at the back of it on the ocean, which creates a great opportunity. I've presented this plan to many of the cruise lines already, and some of them have shown interest to say, can we have exclusivity to tendering at that location? So you would have a direct traffic of tenders straight to this location. That means a guarantee of business where Caymanians will be able to get to sell their crafts and arts, as well as get the experience need to be in this second pillar of our economy, which is tourism. That's the one thing that we can always depend on, is tourism, because tourism is Cayman. Cayman is us. I mean, the other industries that we're into can be lost. You can't lose tourism, because tourism is an identity of an environment and its people. So this will help us to continue to deliver that, because when people work here, they'll go through a regimen of training and bookwork to make sure that they're following standards within the industry and be able to be certified after a period of time of being at that location. So I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be awesome. I hopefully, again, I must say that there's a lot of hurdles to get through within government with procurement and all these other things, but hopefully we can get through those quite quickly and get the ball groundbreaking, maybe hopefully next year.
Well, I as I said, I was fascinated, and now I know where it is and what's going to happen. I think it's a very good note to end today's conversation on. And I wish you all the best with this project. I think it will benefit everyone, including the tourists. As you know, it's only a small trip from the cruise ship port to that event, and it's Caymanian as you're promoting. It allows Caymanian to get that same experience in a 5-star facility, and that's what it looks like from here. A 5-star facility which is Caymanian owned, and I applaud the ideas, and I trust that this comes to fruition very soon. Well, Minister, thank you very much for spending this hour with me. Went a little bit longer than normal, but you know what? We need to get more of this information, because information and knowledge gives power. Thank you for attending, sir. Any final words?
Thank you so much, Ralph. I do apologize. I do talk a lot. I just try to get as much information as I possibly can out there. But thank you again for allowing me to be on the show to share my government's plans and visions in respect to what we do, and as well as me as a representative for Georgetown Central on behalf of the Cayman Islands, as well as the people of Georgetown Central individually. I want to say I continue to ask the public to pray, not only for me, but every member of Parliament. Only with God's grace can we have the strength and the responsibility and the discipline to make sure we do the right things on your behalf as a country. With that being said, thank you so much. God bless you and the rest of the Cayman Islands.
Thank you. Safe travels, and see you when you get back, Minister. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Taste buds ready, because Taste of Cayman is back. Join us May 13th at Festival Green, Camana Bay. Eat, drink, and dance the night away. Taste of Cayman offers the very best of Cayman's food and drink scene, with plenty of music to keep the party going. Get your festival tickets online today at tasteofcayman.org or call 623-6700. Brought to you by the Cayman Islands Tourism Association and sponsored by AI Rentals, Camana Bay, DMS Broadcasting, and numerous valued partners.
She pretty natural.
Oh, yeah. Especially from this view. Oh, yeah.
What her name is again?
Cardinal Avenue.
Oh, yeah.
This is a spot. You could put the band right here.
Get Impulse Band
And regeneration.
and the Cayman Islands folk singers. Bring some classics.
Yep. And we can just set up the stalls along here.
And the kids, don't forget the kids.
Oh, no.
Games, bouncy castles, snow cones, face painting.
Just all of them on there. May the 8th from 4 p.m. till 8 p.m.
Yeah, we win the sun not too hot.
Coronation celebration.
And fireworks, we need fireworks.
We can have to call Grandma on that one.
The Coronation Celebration. This public holiday Monday, May 8th, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. with fireworks. We're on Cardinal Avenue.
And I hope to see you there this Monday. In our second segment, which will take us up to closing, we spoke with Mr. Mario Banks, and he discussed topical issues including trade schools, employment for Caymanians, immigration reform, election plans. Here is our interview with Mr. Mario E. Banks. Mario E. Banks to today's show. Mr. Mario E. Banks is a former senior government official in various capacities. He now serves as a human resource professional, an independent director and businessman. For years, he has been active in the community and politics and continues to be a public affairs commentator and contributor. Good afternoon, Mr. Mario. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon, Ralph. Doing very well. I want to just say good afternoon to all your listeners on social media and on 89.1, Bobo FM, and all the people of the Cayman Islands. It's good to be back, Ralph, with you on the show. Last time we were on the panel and we took a little break, and it's good that you're now reinvented into Cayman Conversations, and you're getting bigger and better. So this is great. Very good.
Thank you very much. We took some ideas and suggestions from the last show. And so we included the radio access to that, which is very popular these days. And of course, it gave us each an opportunity to have something to say and to comment on topics that we feel passionate about. And doing it this way, we not only share the platform with other people on other days, but also we get a chance to have a conversation. And that's why it's called Cayman Conversations. Well, Mr. Banks, we know you're passionate about human resources and employment. And just recently, we spoke with the minister and another guest, and we were always talking about employment. I want you to give us just some thoughts about employment and job opportunities in the Cayman Islands at this stage. How do you feel about it?
Yes, thank you very much for your kind remarks. I have always been very passionate about human capital development. I believe that in the Cayman Islands, we are a service economy. We don't export physical products or export labor and services. So human capital is a very, very important part of our economic pillar. And we need to definitely ensure that human capital is available, well skilled, and prepared, and that we have proper development and succession planning. Those are all elements of good human capital management. And I've always been passionate about Caymanians being at the forefront of that effort, that journey, and making sure that there is a level playing field for Caymanians, and Caymanians get first choice, and that Caymanians are developed, and that they are also, of course, held accountable to perform and to compete, but that they're not disenfranchised. From the time I was in university in the early 80s, I developed that great passion for not just for learning, but also for ensuring that we have proper human capital development in any country. And that's why I was a founding member and the second president of the Overseas Students Association, which was an organization that was formed to provide support for overseas students and also local tertiary or college level students. I also in the late 90s was a founding member and also one of the founding presidents of the Cayman Islands Society for Human Resource Professionals, again, to help to build that bridge to the future in terms of human capital development. Now, I know that there's been a lot of discussion. You and I have talked about it, and been a lot of discussion in other talk shows and in the community about about employment and about a trade school and stuff like that. But I want to just say a couple of things. When the community college, which is now the university college, when the community college was developed as a campus, I mean, it was for many years the community college operated out of the Cayman Islands High School. They used the sixth form block and some of the classrooms in high school, and community college did study classes in the evenings. But when they eventually got their new campus, where the campus is now, and then the late Honorable Benson O.E. Banks was the Minister of Education at the time, and did a lot of development. But the community college was developed, and the campus was opened under his government. They had a very wonderful, well-equipped, state-of-the-art vocational program. They had a hospitality school. They had a reception area. They had front desk. They had a kitchen. They had a bar. Some of that is still there, but it's not really being used, right? But it was state of the art. Then they also had mechanical. They had construction, electrical, plumbing. All those were subjects at the community college. When I was working at the Ministry of Community Development in the mid-90s, and we did a program there where we had offered stipends to people who wanted to get involved in vocational studies, technical studies, in the trades, whether it was construction, electrical, plumbing, hospitality, sheet rocking, construction stuff, yes. Right? So what we did is we attracted a cohort of students who were into that program. We got employers in the private sector, construction companies. At that time, it was through the Cayman Contractors Association and another organization called CASE, which was the Society of Architects, Surveyors, and Engineers. And we also had the Hospitality and Tourism Association, Restaurant Association. And we arranged with them that these folks would get an opportunity for work experience. But in addition, the government at that time, to their credit, put in place a stipend for these students so that they didn't have to worry about being able to make ends meet, and the employers didn't have to pay them a regular salary. If they wanted to pay them something, they could. But the employer was supposed to provide them with the opportunity to learn, give them mentoring, development, coaching, and help them to learn these trades, right? But I'm here to tell you, sadly, that I think we started that program with about 60 students. And after the first term, we probably had only half of those left. And after the next term, they had about 10. So they were getting a stipend. They had jobs. They were also the schooling was paid for. And so they didn't do it. Let's fast forward a little bit later. A little bit more current. We have SciFec. SciFec, I haven't visited SciFec since COVID, but prior to COVID, I was there quite a bit, and we did some tours and stuff with, from industry. And I mean, they have programs there like hairdressing. They got videography. They got all kind of good programs, right? But again, my point is, we talk about all these. We want a trade school, but we have all these programs. Why is it that these programs are not working? I am told, and I haven't seen it. You probably have seen it. That the new John Gray High School that just recently opened has a fantastic suite of technical studies facilities. Now, again, you have all of these facilities. Why is it that we still talk about needing a trade school? We had the John Silver's property in West Bay that was purchased by government probably 25 years ago. That was supposed to be a hotel training school. It still hasn't happened. It's a white elephant. So my point is this: human capital development does not have a champion in the Cayman Islands. We need to have human capital development champions, or a champion, to push these things through, because we keep talking about it year after year, election after election, and it doesn't happen. Let me just say, so the question is, Ralph,
Yes.
why is it that all these programs are not working? Why is it that it haven't produced anything of substance? Now, maybe there's some students that got through and did well, but I think those are, I don't know who they are, but there's a minority of people. We just need to look at what's causing it. Do we have proper focus? Do we have a vision? Do we have the funding? Is it aligned to a strategy? Or is it just stuff that we throw money at and then we say, okay, tick that box, that's done, but we're not getting the results? And I think that, as I started out to say at the beginning, as a service economy, human capital is a critical input, and we have to treat it as the critical input that it is and stop paying lip service to it. And the blame for that has to be shared by public sector and the private sector, and also by some of the students and some of their parents, because some parents might feel that their children are destined for certain careers and certain jobs, when in fact they would be better and more happy and more productive and more successful in different areas. But they get sort of pigeonholed in certain areas and they don't work out, or they don't like it, or they fail. The other missing element in this issue of job placement for Caymanians is the Scholarship Secretariat. Scholarship Secretariat is a unit within the Ministry of Education that actually coordinates scholarships being granted to Caymanians, ensures that they're meeting the grades every semester to get their funds for the next semester. But what I see as a missing area is probably because of lack of resources. And I was a member of the Education Council in the late 80s to early 90s. And I know a lot of it is volunteers, but that was a long time ago as well. But nowadays, with the kind of budget that we have of over $1 billion, $1 billion, we need to focus more funds, more investment into human capital. And going back to the Education Council Scholarship Secretariat, they want to have a few people in there, and I think some of them are actually multitasking with other jobs. But nobody actually seems to be coordinating with these students to see who is coming back, what skills they have, what qualifications, where they're going to be placed within the public sector, or how you're going to align their recruitment and placement in the private sector vis-a-vis work permits that are granted or renewed in the private sector when you're having these Caymanians coming back from university that can be assimilated into jobs and developed and be able to succeed and to move up.
But if I may say something, Mario, just last week we had Mr. Michael Wills, and he actually came on here at very short notice, and we were talking about the graduation of a couple of students that did well, and he spoke about the program. It was attended by the Premier and some government officials, and he actually was saying there is a need for funding for this program that he's offering those students. He has a lot of students signed up, and but unfortunately, on his own, he cannot enroll them because they need funding for it. So that was what he was emphasizing. He asked, if he was asking the public at this point, who he has admitted got some help from, to come on board with him so we can train people. So it sounds like the problem is not with finding people to train, but finding resources to pay for the training. Now, you've mentioned that there was some resources, or there's some facilities that were doing training in the past. And my question to you at this point, are those facilities still available in the government infrastructure, or does it have to be in a private infrastructure like Mr. Michael Miles?
I think it could be a combination. I'm not familiar with all of Mr. Michael Miles's facilities or offerings. I know he has programs, but there are facilities at the University College. They need to probably be dusted off and put back into operation. I understand that there's some first-class, world-class facilities at the John Gray High School, the new John Gray High School, and there are probably others at other high schools. SciFec, as far as I know, still has those facilities. So it just needs to be coordinated. There needs to be a SAR, a director,
a coordinator, a director. I agree.
Exactly, because to pull these things together, I mean, we continue to put, have these strategic policy statements with all this wonderful stuff, but then nobody thinks about, okay, how are we going to make this work now? How are we going to connect these dots and make this thing work? And how are we going to test it to make sure it's effective? And how are we going to report and be held accountable for these public funds? I think that we're missing an opportunity for the last 30 years of not delivering enough. At the same time, the government is collecting tremendous amount of money on work permit fees, right? And there's also some conditions that are applied to employers on their work permit. Some of them have conditions that they have to give a scholarship, or they have to train a Caymanian or whatever. All those funds can be directed to these causes, but they need to be coordinated, and it got to be coordinated by having proper resources and the existing and we'll talk about this later on if you have time. The existing immigration infrastructure is so dysfunctional and so under-resourced and so heavily dependent on volunteers, it seems, that they're just not able to keep up. So the other area of job placement for Caymanians is to do with the Department of Work, WORC, Workforce Opportunities and Residency Cayman Work. And they have a jobs portal that they're supposed to replace advertising that was once done in newspapers such as Caymanian Times. But this job portal really is not working in terms of, maybe some employers are supposedly not having to pay a couple of dollars for ads, but it's not working in terms of what it was intended to do, because Caymanians cannot seem to get registered without a lot of hoopla on that jobs portal. You have to be registered to apply for jobs there. When you apply for jobs, there's no linkage or accountability or enforcement to make sure that the employer actually acknowledges your application or even considers it. And when that employer goes in for a permit, again, there's no auditing, no checks and balances, no enforcement. So again, and that's another whole big subject, that thing about employer recruitment portals and artificial intelligence and all. That's a whole different subject. We could talk about that for hours also.
Yes.
But that's another loophole in terms of job placement for Caymanians. The other area that there was a group on the radio this morning on the Business Buzz talking about the hospitality industry and the hotels attracting Caymanians and stuff, right? And I kept thinking, that's wonderful. But one of the things that strikes me, and when you go into these hotels and stuff, you see the amount of non-Caymanians everywhere in those hotels, right? And that's because they did not have Caymanians to fill those jobs, which is another subject for another day. But I understand that the few Caymanians who go in there to work feel so strange. They feel so like they're in a foreign country, and they're not being integrated into the foreign workforce. HR is not doing anything about proper orientation of those people, and to have proper teamwork and cultural synergies and cultural recognition and whatnot. And that's why Caymanians are going into the hospitality industry, and especially those big hotels and stuff, and they're not lasting long, because it's like it's not a very conducive environment, and there needs to be proper orientation programs for all expatriate workers coming into the country, especially on the front lines of hospitality. There needs to be mentoring and a buddy system for young Caymanians who get into that industry, so that they get their foot in the door, they get grounded, they get some development, they get some little, like say, a buddy system, so that they can have a fighting chance and be able to stay in that job. So Ralph, there's a whole host of things that needs to be done, but we need to
Yes.
coordinate it properly.
And you make a very good point. The things that you've been mentioning, we've had discussions on them. But one thing I would love to see is a survey done by our workforce. We need to know what jobs our people are interested in. Because if you're not interested in working in a hotel industry, it doesn't make any sense trying to train you for it or to push you in that direction. We don't understand our workforce, what are they inclined to do? Yeah, we have training available, but we need to sort of tailor make it. And it needs somebody to coordinate and drive it, because unless you understand your workforce, what their needs are, what their aspirations are, you wouldn't be able to find jobs for them or train them appropriately and place them. Because I've spoken with our friend Mark from time to time. He says there are jobs in the hotel industry, but who's going to do that? And so therefore he has to bring in from outside. There are new hotels coming up. What's going to happen in the future? But if our people are not interested in working in that industry, we're going to have to fill them with people from overseas. And so as we talk about other areas for example, in industries and in careers, we need to understand what careers are students, school leavers aiming for when they leave school. And this is where you should be starting from, to get a plan in place to identify what professions are needed.
I mean, I think you're right. I think we needed to have a proper skills, a jobs needs survey, and also a skills needs assessment, and what people are interested in. I tell you this: when you see Caymanians on the front lines, whether it's diving, water sports, or whether it's restaurant or bars or hotel, when you see Caymanians working, man, they are good. I something, and I always, whenever I see them, I always praise them. I praise the foreigners too if they give good service, or when they give good service. But I tell the Caymanians, I say, this is such to have a talent like how you have, to be able to talk to people, to be able to communicate. I say you can take that skill into any job or any profession, because you develop so much with those frontline jobs, and there's nothing wrong with those jobs. They pay well. Yeah, there's shift work and there's issue with that, but I mean that is minor. You can get your whole day off sometime, and you got to work in the evenings. But but I think, like I said, there's lacking a proper messaging, proper coordination, proper alignment, and it can't be done in a vacuum. It has to be part of a whole plan, where all of the spokes in the wheel are properly aligned and straightened and oiled for it to work properly. And the question of all the hotels and no people to work for is another issue. I think we got to look at whether we can handle all of this too, because we have to get into the issue of carrying capacity. And that is something that nobody seems to be looking at, because we're looking at the money, but we got to look at the what my friend Billy Adam calls short-term gain for long-term pain. But to be able to mitigate the damage of some of this stuff, we got to put the money in, whether it's private sector, public sector, or a partnership, to be able to properly coordinate training and development, messaging, getting people from the time they are at middle school level to understand what their skills are, what they want to do, and then start to focus them in that direction for a career. And that's how we build a nation. Apprenticeship schemes, development schemes, but having people that are passionate about it and are going to be proper SARs and coordinators of it, and to be held accountable for results.
And this is what is the driving force behind what we're doing today with Cayman Conversations, because we need to talk about this thing some more. The knowledge and the experience and the advice and the experts are available, but we need to come together and have discussions and put our ideas together and sort of get the word out, or make some effort to make it happen. We can talk about these things forever, but if there's no execution, it doesn't make sense. And you're telling me that way back in time, this has been happening, but it's not, we're not getting anywhere with this. So how do we make something happen? Like I said, if we keep talking, put it on the front lines, or put it where people have to hear, and hold people accountable, and make recommendations, as to why this should happen and identify, okay, we need to have someone in charge. Can you put someone in charge and put pressure on the powers that be? So let's get this thing done, because we've been talking, and we just can't stop talking, because I understand people say, I've had enough, my energies are gone, but we have to keep pressing. If you really want to achieve something in life, we have to keep pressing on. It's not going to be easy for everything, but individuals such as yourself who are passionate cannot stop talking. You have to keep talking, and no one should shut you up because you need to keep talking or something. So we have an independent platform called Cayman Conversation, and we'll keep talking, because at some point, somebody will listen.
Well, people got to listen, but they also got to act, you know. And I tell you, it's very tiring to keep saying this thing year after year, decade after decade, and nothing happens. And that's the reason why I decided to run for political office a couple of times, because I kept saying, well, I'm going to work behind the scenes, provide advice, provide support, and get things done. And it just doesn't get done. So I said, let me just try it myself and see if I can get in there where I can make it happen. And it hasn't happened yet. So what can I say?
On that note, and I had on my list, what are your plans for election? Are you gonna try again, or are you gonna take a back seat?
Well, I haven't decided yet what to do about the next election. The general elections is slated for 2025. This is now 2023, so we do have some time to consider things. But I believe that, like I said, the whole issue of, and perhaps in one of our future conversations, we can talk a bit more about immigration reform if you don't have enough time today to really discuss it, because it is a big topic to properly flesh out. But
we do have some time, so feel free to comment if you would like to.
Yeah. Well, let me just say that in terms of your question about my intention, I haven't decided what to do. I'm still thinking about it, listening to people, praying about it. My wife is also my greatest support and advisor, and I have to make sure that she's happy. So I have to also listen to her and my other family members. But you know, I believe in a structure. I don't believe in a marriage of convenience. And when I ran in 2021, we didn't have a team or a party or an alliance. We ran as a whole pile of independents, which was not very wise. And so we ended up with a marriage of convenience that we have now. The opposition party, the Progressives, I was once the very senior in that party. I'm no longer in the party, but I was the first vice chairman. So I was almost up at the top. But they have gone astray as well. So unless they reform significantly, I definitely wouldn't join them. But I think I'm a party man. I'm a person for structure. I believe in a proper ideology that people can be judged by. I believe in having accountability. I believe that people who get elected or who run must run for the right reasons. And if you're going to go in there to make money or to be corrupt or whatever, stay out of it and do something else. I think that people must do it for the right reasons, and that's why I have put myself forward, and at great cost and sacrifice. But I do it because of having a passion for the country, passion for the young people, passion for future generations, and knowing the right things to do based on my experience, based on what I've been through. Having to run away from my country of birth, which was Isle of Pines, Cuba. So I know how it feels, and I know how I don't want other young people to have that same hardship. But like I say, I think that we need to have a structure. And I underscore if I run in 2025, and I haven't decided to do that yet, it'll have to be with a proper structure, whether it's a new party, a team, or alliance, or whatever, of people that are like-minded, that are honest, that are intelligent, that have a good feel for being representatives as well as being parliamentarians and legislators. So you can't have a unbalance where you want to have people that are in the community as sugar mamas or sugar daddies. That has its place perhaps, but we need to have people who are focusing on on the big issues. We need to also put in place the district councils, because they'll also create opportunities for people to serve and to learn and to be able to eventually succeed the MPs in those constituencies. And I think that there are many issues that need to be focused on, but I think environmental protection, sensitivity, recognizing our carrying capacity and how much is enough, looking at human capital development, looking at some of the social decay, looking at affordable housing, the erosion to the beaches and infrastructure, roads and whatnot. There's a whole lot of big things that need to be focused on. And if whoever gets in the next election need to get in as a team with a proper manifesto, with a proper plan of action to deal with all those things. I really don't want to be a part of a group who's going to just go in there and just waste time and just do a lot of things that are not going to make an impact. I'm all about trying to make an impact, because we don't have a lot of time left to address some of these serious issues that we are facing. So I hope that gave you a little bit of a feel for where I'm at. But I have decided, I got a couple of job prospects. I got a couple of projects I'm working on. There's something overseas that kind of came up as well. So, I haven't decided yet, but I want to certainly make an impact and make contribution in the Cayman Islands. When you go into politics in Cayman, be careful, because you get blacklisted, and it's not something that is obvious or overt. It's very much on the table, and people, you're disenfranchised from projects or employment or other things. So unless you are retired or independently wealthy, or you're young enough that you can make a mistake and bounce back, then politics in a small country is not easy. It's a shame, because there are other countries like Bermuda, for example, where people can run for office, and if they get in, they can continue to be engaged with that organization they're working with, unless it's a public sector organization that is part of their area, and the private sector. They can continue to work, and if they don't get elected, they're not unemployable. In Cayman, it's a different thing, where people are, like I said, they're blackballed or whatever word you want to use, and it's very subtle. They either think that you're going to run again, so they don't want to hire you, or they feel that, I don't like your views, or you run against my friend, so I'm going to do my best to punish you. So, you have to be strong, and you have to have options, but politics is not an easy road in Cayman. So I want to serve. I have a passion for service, but I haven't decided what to do about 2025 or even earlier, or any other future runs for political office.
Okay. Do you know of any parties that are being formed outside of the progressives?
No, I have been hearing some snippets from various people about this one and that one that is going to do something or whatever, but they haven't called me. And basically, like I say, if people want to get involved, whether they want to volunteer or serve or contribute funds, or they feel that they want to form something better, and they're good people with good ideologies and intentions, I'm certainly would be welcome a call or looking at that group, but I'm not actively looking for anything at this point in politics.
Okay.
But like I say, I imagine the progressives are going to run. They say they're going to run a slate of at least 15 seats in the next election. Whether the current PAC group stays together long enough to run the next election, I don't know. But like I say, I've been hearing a couple of things, and let's see what happens. We need to have, one thing is for sure, We need to have good, credible people, male and female, in this country to take us forward. People who cannot be bought out, people who are intelligent, people who can go abroad and represent us, people who are not going to embarrass us as a country. So that's why I like to think that we can do something. But to go back to the subject today about job placement and trade schools and stuff, there's a lot of things that can be done, can be pulled together. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just need to kind of coordinate and align things better and join up those dots and make this thing work. It's not rocket science, but we're just making it difficult by not addressing it. So we're kicking the can down the road, and then we're making the problem even bigger. I just want to tell you that you remember Vision 2008, this document here.
Yes.
Vision 2008 was a strategic plan, 1999 to 2008. And it's a wonderful plan that had a lot of people involved, probably thousands of people involved in it. And it developed a lot of plans and action plans and whatnot. And one of them that they developed was Action Plan 7, which was to create a new human resources authority or similar body, which will merge and make efficient the functions of immigration and labor. That was from Vision 2008, 1999, 2008, 10-year plan, right? That hasn't been done. If that was done and followed through and done properly, a lot of stuff that I'm talking about here today would have been dealt with. I did a paper in a book, Cayman Islands, History, Politics, and Society. It was essays in honor of J.A. Roy Bodden. The book was published last year. It only cost $25, and you were I think you were at the launch as well. And
Yes.
$25, you can get it from Mr. Dr. Livingston Smith at the
UCCI.
College, or Dr. Stephanie Fullerton Cooper.
Yeah.
And I wrote a chapter 19 in that book. And my chapter was dealing with the subject of reform of the labor and human capital development framework and systems in the Cayman Islands. That was my chapter in the book. And it's actually a good read, if I may say so myself. But it talks about the pulling together the whole immigration board situation, realigning it, merging the immigration part of work really with labor, so you have a joined up system, and then also how to better align with Education Council Secretariat, how to align with private sector organizations, how to align with industry. And I would encourage you and the listeners to get that book, which is $25 CI can get from which is a hell of a deal really. You get from from UCCI, and read not just mine but other wonderful essays as well about Cayman history, politics, and it basically was papers that talk about big topics, and that covers a lot of stuff that I would want to talk about in terms of how to go about reforming parts of immigration that deal with human capital development, which is such an important topic in a service-based, growing, small, industrialized service economy.
And you know what I've found in my years, not only in the Cayman, but overseas as well, that there have been solutions and suggestions put forward that make a lot of sense. And they're sitting on the shelves gathering dust. And if we had put some of those into action, we would be far ahead than where we are. What we end up doing is now digging up those ideas and executing them now and realizing that, wow, this thing works. So we need to get to a stage where let's look at what has been done already and tweak it, if anything, and let's execute and get these things happening and stop, just playing politics, as we say. With
Exactly.
Mario, sorry, I'll give some final words, please.
Yeah. To that point, all I want to say is that probably about 12 years ago in your newspaper. Not the Cayman in Time, but the one before that, the Reporter, right? Reporter?
No,
Or
Reporter was another company.
okay, yeah, because it was your paper then. It must have been when you first started the Times. I did a paper there about a new category of permanent residency, and in that paper I outlined that, and perhaps in one of our future conversations we can talk a bit about
Yes.
that. But you were kind enough to give me an opportunity to put an exclusive in your paper on that subject. You know what I found interesting? That was 10 years ago, and today
Yes.
we're talking about that same subject, whether we need to look at PR and look at the point system and all those other issues. And again, it depends on, it seems like unless somebody particular says something, it doesn't get action. But we need to get on with this thing and just address these things, and let's move on and build a better country as a result of shared commitment, human capital development, sharing brain power, and working as a team and not against each other. Ralph, I thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope that I could be back again, and as your show grows and becomes more popular and you get people listening and contributing, that it'll be a first-class addition to our intellectual discourse in the Cayman Islands.
And I thank you very much, Mr. Mario. And you are welcome to come back anytime. And by the way, the newspaper was called Employment Weekly, and it was to deal with employment and jobs. Right. It's amazing. 10 years, we're still pushing the same agenda, which is a good agenda. And on Cayman Conversations, we're not giving up. Thank you very much, and hope to see you again sometime. Thank you.
Thank you too. Take care.